Hi, my name is Jude Reeferson, and today I'll be discussing my group's work on measuring the temperature of online social communities using neural networks. Ultimately, our presentation will travel through 3 steps. The first is our background information, why we felt that this was an important area to conduct research in, and why we were driven to create a model that might be able to help solve the mental fatigue problem. The second is our project, the model that we built, the research that we conducted, and ultimately how we came about building our artificial intelligence model that could help solve this problem. And the third is the results that we achieved from conducting this model and the lessons we learned as a result of our research. We'll be beginning with the background information. Particularly, our group found that the mental health crisis is perhaps the most pressing issue our country is currently facing. The mental fatigue crisis, the one that we ultimately decided to work on solving, has some alarming statistics that really drove our group's interest. The first is that almost 3 in 5 Americans, employees, are currently experiencing negative impact due to work-related stress. And this is compounded with the fact that we've seen a 38% jump in physical fatigue due to stress since 2019. In fact, all of this is leading to a staggering 76% of US employees who are experiencing worker burnout. This shows that mental fatigue is perhaps one of the most pressing challenges that we're currently facing. And this is on top of a mental health crisis that has been plaguing the country and growing for years. As of now, 21% of US adults are experiencing mental illness, and 46.2% of US adults are receiving treatment for these mental illnesses. And we know that mental illness is one of the key indicators of potential suicide. In fact, a recent study found that 90% of people who die by suicide may have experienced symptoms of a mental health condition. This makes the mental health crisis an incredibly serious challenge that the country is facing, and one that every member of our group was extremely passionate about trying to fight. As students in college, we've seen firsthand the challenges that mental health can place upon our peers, and we felt that if we can have a part in potentially finding a help for this, that it would make a great impact. And so that ultimately drove us to work on our model and the project that we worked on. So what exactly was our project? So first, our project was ultimately a model that could predict the sentiment of a group and essentially predict how many likes a message would receive. And that would help us predict sort of the climate of the current group chat, potentially helping us to predict fatigue earlier than the moderators of the group chat might have realized beforehand. So we started by creating a simple baseline model. Our simple baseline model was built on a very simple linear regression. And so just the most simple possible linear regression. And it was based off of the author and historical like average of the author. And that would output a prediction for the message. So basically, it would take as input an author, it would take as an input the average likes that author received, and it would predict how many likes the next post was going to, or that message was going to receive, excuse me. And this arrived at a staggeringly high 70% accuracy for our baseline model. We think this is because most group messages average between 1 and 3. And so ultimately, if the model was predicting an average of 2, it was probably going to be right. So its accuracy was driven by that and not actually by its ability to predict messages. In other words, if it were in a group chat where there was a greater variance between the likes that a message received, it would not be nearly as accurate. And so ultimately, this drove sort of our thinking as we began to construct our current model that we were working on. So in terms of our current model, we created a 4-layer neural network. And I'm going to have to call this out because that's not the right part. Wait, what? No, it is. Just doesn't have the second network. I'll cut that. This ultimately drove us to our model. So our model was constructed by using a 4-layer neural network and with 2 hidden layers. So this leveraged 2 hidden layers with the size of 0.5 and 0.25 respectively. And to train the model, we use the ReLU activation function. This works by assigning value to each input based on the weights of the neurons. So it was a powerful training function that allowed us to increase our accuracy significantly. And in terms of the way that we contextualize our data, we used a bag of words. So our input data was an array, which was a series of lists containing bag of words, and all of those words were derived from the original GroupMe messages with the likes that they received. In other words, our model worked this way. We had an input layer, which was populated by this bag of words array. It fed into a hidden layer of size 0.5, and this was used to process and transform the data into an output. This was passed into a second hidden layer, which was of smaller size 0.25, and ultimately this was passed into our output layer, which predicted the number of likes that our model would ultimately receive. Well, what our model was considering was the author. It was attachments. We found, in other words, that attachments with videos or images were much more likely to receive a higher like count than those without it, and the length of the messages. We found that longer messages tend to receive more likes because they were generally announcements about big information that lots of people felt compelled to like. In other words, to let the author know that they had read. We considered all of these things into the model, and ultimately, we found some results that were actually quite surprising. So to calculate our results, we used the squared residual loss function, which is seen here. And when we did this, we calculated an accuracy of 65%. And so in some areas, this was only a slight improvement from our baseline, and in some areas, it was actually a market decline from our baseline. And so ultimately we found that even though we considered these extra factors that we predicted would improve the accuracy of our model, we fell short of doing so. And so that does leave room for future improvement. Thank you so much. Bye.